Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Comic Source. I have some creators here to tell us about a brand new, exciting comic book publishing company. Gungnir is the name, if you're not familiar with that term. Odin Staff, Odin Spear. Uh, and I got to tell you, I've been to the website. There's a link in the show notes. You can go and check it out as well. These stories look amazing. I cannot wait to check them out. So we'll go around the horn real quick. Matt Medney is on the show for the first time. We also have Steve
So,
Orlando, friend of the show, returning. And then Jim Krueger, who hasn't been into the show before, but we've talked about it many times having him come on. So I'm glad we're finally making it
oh my
happen.
gosh, I'm so glad it's happening.
Yeah, 100%. So, and a shout out to Matt and Jim. They're coming to us from Emerald City Comic Con. It's a working weekend for them. So we're
Oh
glad
yeah.
taking the time. So
Hey Steve.
who wants to kick it off with telling us or telling our listeners in your own words what Gungnir is?
I guess.
It's got to be you, Matt. We got to start at the beginning. That's where we start.
So yeah. So I mean, I was running Heavy Metal magazine for 3 years, and then left at the beginning of last year, and was thinking about what I wanted to do next. And I had built this amazing relationship with Steve while over there, and we were kicking around some ideas, and I hit him with the idea of why don't we do a publisher that is about not just established names, legends, but really curating young talent, really finding great stories above all, really leaning into, I have a music background, leaning into the punk rock nature of branding. I love the color pink and I love Odin. And I was like, let's go Norse, let's go hot pink, let's go punk rock, and let's tell some really wicked stories. And, to my delight, Steve was all in. And I'll let him tell you his side of it. But, that was sort of the lightning rod for me. And then we started building it out and looking to build out the team more. And then about, I guess it would have been in May of last year, I had the absolute privilege of being able to work with Jim on Steve Aoki's graphic novel slash prose called Hero Quest, Genesis and Double Helix. And Jim wrote it. I creative directed it. Steve Aoki was fingerprints all over the whole thing, and we've been doing that for the last year. And I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, I said to Jim one night, I was like, I have a crazy idea. Do you want to do this publishing company with Steve and I? And again, to my delights, Jim was all in from the beginning. And we've been nurturing this small little vision of punk rock stories, tales from the All Father. We're really leaning in with the branding and the tagline, stories for the next generation of dreamers and thinkers, is something that I really hold true to my to the company. And we want to be telling stories that are not just fun and adventurous, but leave you thinking and try to provoke conversations and try to allow people to do what I always find was the best part about literature, which is if somebody reads a book or enjoys a graphic novel or listens to a podcast or listens to an audiobook and they get a notion or an allegory or a motif that they want to have a conversation with their friends about on a Friday night with a beer, then we've done our job. And that's really the heart of what we're sort of going for here.
Yeah, I always say that my favorite comics are the ones that make me think, more value for your comic dollar when you're thinking about it later. So let's hear from you, Steve. I mean, I think you have a little bit of a unique perspective, having come in, cut your teeth at DC after being a fan and starting very young there, but also mentored by that older generation. So is this a way for you to give back in a way?
Well, yeah, yes. Now I am the older generation. Uh, you know. Uh,
Oh no.
well, it's funny that Matt said I was right. I was immediately on board. As I remembered, I raked him over the coals for many months, trying to figure out how we could make this company, different and better. So I'm glad that his time scale is much more generous than mine in my memory or timeline rather. Um, but yeah, I mean, as you said, Jace, I have been, I've worn every hat in the industry. I've done everything involved with making a comic book at some point in my career. I've illustrated a 100-page graphic novel for my thesis. I've lettered, I've colored, I've done pre-production, I've done it all. It's not all what I like doing, but I've done it all. I was a submissions editor when I was in high school for a company. So I've certainly um, I've done the rounds, and at the same time, this year's going to be 10 years of me being full time as a writer in comics, even though I've been around and learning at the craft since like 1997. Um, and this is, I feel comfortable saying that I've seen a lot of shit in the past 10 years. Obviously, many people have seen even more, but when Matt came to me, yeah, you'll use the phrase give back. The question that I asked myself, that I asked Matt when I was signing up is, I've worked, knock on wood, I've worked at almost every company that publishes comics now. And I want, I want to create a company that is like the blue sky opportunity for creatives, the company that I wish was out there when I was trying to break in, for almost 20 years. And that tries to put all the work in to fix not necessarily problems but frustrations I've had at other companies so that we can all better serve the community. That doesn't just mean it means the readers, it means the retailers, it means creators, because I've spent a lot of time listening to all of them over the past decade. And so yeah, it is. It's a chance. I see it as a chance to, yes, do what I did for years with my own mentors and with the executive editor position, mostly being story based, help folks tell the best version of their story. And at the same time, it's also a chance to hopefully, be in the room and help make this a company that is the exact kind of company I wish was out there 10, 15, 20, even 25 years ago.
So for you, Jim, I don't want to use the word old, but maybe we'll say elder statesman of
Well, I'm just going to put it this way, and this is what I was told along. Eventually, all great men look alike.
100. See, that's why Jim and I get along so well. Uh, was it a no-brainer for you, Jim, to jump on board when you talked to Matt and started hearing about these ideas? I mean, again, you've been around, Eisner winner and done some incredible things in your career. You've worked with Steve Aoki for a long time. So was it a no-brainer for you to jump on board with Gungnir? Were you really excited? Are you really excited to be a part of it?
It was, I mean, back in the day when I was like working at Marvel, as a creative director, and it would be my job to pick people that I would hire. I was always like, can they do the job? And that was only 50% of it. Like the other 50% was always like, is this person a person that we're all going to get along with? Is this someone like if, that is going to be great for the crew? And so Matthew and I, we just hit it off right away, and we kind of had each other's backs, and we're working in tandem. It was just so nice, and I always just want to work with nice people.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, right? What's that old cliche in comics? You need to be fast, nice, or really good, and if you have two of the three, you're
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
make it
I,
work.
I, I think Neil Gaiman just wrote that rule recently and claimed that it was his.
Oh my.
I think that was
Well,
the
if you want
going
to, I
around.
will say, Jim, if you want to work with nice people, I don't. It's
From
perhaps
kind is so.
problematic. It's perhaps problematic that Matt hired me, but we'll check in a
Oh
couple.
no, oh no! I just got cut off again. Hold on.
We'll see. Yeah, frozen. Well, while Jim works out his technical difficulties, let me throw it back over to you, Matt. When you go to the website, you look at it, it talks a lot about genre. We're seeing a lot of what looks like mythological stories, a lot of science fiction stories, not superhero, what have you. And, I think it is a bit of a misnomer. And we're pulling away from that in the comic industry. And I'm glad but there still is the outside perception that comic is superheroes. And it's so much more than that. Specifically, can you tell us why you're kind of leaning into those other types of genre stories? What do you think it is about mythological stories, science fiction stories that lend themselves to the goals you want of, again, starting conversations about story and ideas later?
Totally. I'm a student of Asimov and Frank Herbert and even J.K. Rowling and what she did with Harry Potter. I always say, Harry Potter specifically, if you think about it through the lens that if you're an 11-year-old kid and you read each book as you grow age by age, the life lessons that she has written in the stories a tribute to the age lessons that you need to learn as a growing teenager. And that's sort of like mastery of words, to have a story start that's very childlike, which Sorcerer's Stone, and go to very adult, which is Deathly Hollows, and have that scale for you as a teenager is something that really resonated with me. Foundation really resonated with me. Obviously, Dune as a book really resonated with me. All the Lovecraftian stories, and as much as I love um, all the superhero stuff, I mean, I got Captain America tattoo right here, so there's no hiding my love of the Marvel and DC universes. From a storytelling standpoint, there's only so many ways to skin that cat, and I think Marvel and DC are just the best at telling those types of stories. And I always gravitate towards, how do you tell the most interesting, the most different, the most wacky stories within genre, within science fiction and horror, and everything in and around that. And to me, that doesn't always land on superheroes, because other people do them great. And there's a lot more in the genre space than just superheroes, and we want to explore those ideas.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Like you said, a different way of doing things. And you kind of mentioned that as well, Steve, when you're talking about, a publisher doing things differently. So maybe you can allay some of those frustrations you had when you were trying to break in. So anything specifically that you all are doing differently, especially in terms of looking for talent, that you think no one else is doing it that way?
Well, I mean, a lot of it, unfortunately, because we're just kicking off for the most part, is going to be a wait and see. But I can tell you, I can watch Matt's sphincter tighten as I start talking about this. Uh, like, and you're asking, why do I have a camera there? It's in the contract, I promise you. It's all very technical. But no, look, I will say that one of the things we're doing from the outset, and I feel comfortable saying this without getting into specifics, is that we are from the gate having listening sessions, not just with, of course, we're interacting with the readers on social media, but with retailers, and not just with retailers to ask how they're not being served, how they could be better served, but actually with folks in creative management to say, what are the things you wish companies were presenting? How can we better serve, of course, creative, because through that comes better stories. So one of the things that I would say out of the get is that foundationally, we are, when I say doing things differently, I think we're having conversations that, to be quite frank, are kind of unprecedented for a company to be having. And as far as the specifics of that, there will be news about that soon, but that one I have to put a pin in. When it comes to creative, I think a lot of it is, I mean, once Jim is on, he'll talk about his editorial philosophy. But, Matt has an amazing eye for new talent. And look, you'll see it when the books come out. Everything looks completely unique. Everything looks completely singular. And that's one of the reasons he's great at what he does. My job, what I try to do is to give what I would have wanted, especially when I was starting out, from an editorial standpoint, especially from a creative editorial standpoint. Sometimes you feel like you're kind of dropped in the deep end, and they're kind of like even some basic things, that you just kind of learn on the job because no one tells you. And also, when you're starting out, you do maybe want a little more guidance. You want a little more sort of positioning and context and counterpointing on a script. However, the key there is that that all has to be in service of helping you tell the story you want to in the best possible fashion, not taking the story you want to tell as a creative and turning it into the way that I would do it, for example. So I try hopefully with the books that are kicking out first to give that to people, because that sort of accelerates the process. Hypothetically, if you're working at Gungnir, instead of, 1 to 3 years of learning stuff on the job from editors who are, trying their best, by the way, like they're the hardest working people in the business. But, they may have to put out 20, 30 books a month. So
Right.
it's just a time economy thing. At Gungnir, you get care from Jim, you get care from me, you get care from Matt, all in the service of making your story the best possible thing it is. And hopefully you cut down that, I don't believe in the phrase paying dues because I mean I was paying those motherfuckers for 20 years.
Yeah.
But I do think there's a learning period. There's where you get into your groove. You know all the ropes. You learn the ropes, and I think that is still important. Hopefully, with us, that's an accelerated process because we're here to help you right along the way. That's what I'm here for. Everything that could happen in comics has happened to me in the past 25 years. So the hope is that yes, we're combining. A nurturing but critical, because you need both, editorial atmosphere with Matt's amazing eye for talent, so that when we're bringing in people that maybe have never worked in comics before, they can hit the ground running. And they can be telling, this is 2024. We can't have beginner stories. Okay, that was a fine first shot. It's got to be gold out of the gate. And that's what we're here to help people do.
Yeah, I mean that sounds fantastic because yeah, it is a crowded landscape and there's any number of gamut, right? Like you're working on Batman, you got all the eyes on you, right? All the way over to doing your own thing at Image where they're going to print the book for you, but you don't really get much other support. So yeah, it sounds like you guys have a really great model. So I'm sure your listeners are like, well, this sounds great, but what about the actual books? What's actually coming out? So let me go through some of the titles that are on the website, and you guys can kind of talk a little bit about what each of them is. So kicking it off with The Stars Within, which is a prose book. What can you tell our listeners about The Stars Within?
Yeah, it's written by a dear friend of mine, Stefan Petruccia. So Stefan actually edited my first ever novel called Beyond Kuiper, The Galactic Star Alliance. And I'd met Stefan through some mutual friends and, sort of mentored me and gave me perspective on writing that been invaluable. So as we were building this company, I wanted to go to him and be like, do you have anything that you're looking to publish and can we have a conversation about it? And again, Stefan was all about it. And we actually have an unannounced graphic novel that he and I penned together that will be coming out after 2025, maybe 2026 that we'll talk about later. But The Stars Within is like a classic sci-fi space opera. It has, I like to say it has threads of Ender's Game because there's a lot of kids being the hero sort of threads throughout it. But the idea is that, without giving away too much of the story, I would say, it's classic sci-fi with a message, heart, and it sort of pulls you in, like within the first page. I honestly read page one and called Stefan, was like, I'm in, like, let's do it. And then I obviously finished reading it. But I think the way that he brings you into the world paints such a vivid picture of the story and the cadence and the atmosphere that it's just a wonder. I'm really excited about that prose. And also just a quick note, I think Jim is finding his way through the Comic-Con herd and is going to come sit next to me because his device has failed him. Actually, I see him right there. He'll be here in 2 seconds.
I will not be joining you in person.
Well, while we're waiting for Jim, Steve, why don't you tell us about Mutant Cats?
The thing is, I just got to be completely honest with you. I have to toss back to Matt because Mutant Cats predates me. So I apologize, but I can sit here bullshitting you, but you need to hear it from the folks that know it best. Because that book was we kicked that book right into production as I walked in the door. We kind of like passed by each other. I grabbed its ass, but that's about it. So I do need to pass to these gentlemen because I'm working on stuff for the future.
All right, tell us about Mutant Cats.
Yeah, I'll quickly run through it. The thing that's really cool about Mutant Cats is that it originated from a collection of digital collectibles, and obviously, I think to be bold and put it out there, the comic community, including myself, have very specific views of NFTs and what they have and have not done to this community. But what this specific project did and sort of came to me with was we don't want to be that. We want to take this community that we built and we want to take it far beyond that digital realm. And we want to take these characters that we have 10,000 members of and we want to create a brand and we want to create a story and we want to take something that's physical, something that people can hold and evolve this into a brand. And that to me, was really cool because I think anytime that people, go to reach across the aisle within an industry where there is, I wouldn't call it controversy, but where there's conflicting viewpoints. There's always a place that you can find great success, both emotionally and hopefully with the story in the book. And Mutant Cats is a hilarious tale of a world of mutant cats that are just like humans, but they're cats. And it's The Office meets, slumbering sci-fi tropes that are called out. And for me, the best part of it is this character called the Mukanga that you'll meet halfway through the book. That is an amalgamation of Godzilla, King Kong, and Mufasa. And it's the Mukanga. And it is basically, to give a little bit more of the premise, a cluster, a yarn cluster, is the unlimited energy source in this universe. And they are trying to start it, not too dissimilar from an arc reactor. But our bumbling band of fools keep messing it up every time. So every time they try to fix it, it just continually gets worse and worse and worse until, and this is a spoiler, so if you don't want to hear it, it is, but they rip a hole in time and emerges the Mukanga. And I will not give any more than that, but it is just fun. We really sort of wanted to take the essence of what this community sort of told us. I wrote it with my buddy Morgan Rosenblum, who has a game right now on Kickstarter called Winds of Numathera, which we don't have anything to do with, but we just think is rock and cool. So if anybody wants to check it out, you guys should. And we listened to this community, and we did, I don't know, maybe 24 Zooms with 100, 200 people on it, just telling us why they got a part of this community and what it meant to them past the digital collectible. And we tried to emulate that in this story while also giving these motifs of, maybe when you make a mistake, you shouldn't keep going. And it's pretty fun.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun. That one's coming out May 7th this year, everybody. That's release date. And I forgot to mention, Stars Within release date just in time for Christmas, December 10th, 2024. But now that we have Jim back with us, Jim, tell us about Hero Quest, the project you do with Steve Aoki. We have a graphic novel. The release date on that is actually coming up real soon here, April 9th. So what can you tell us about Hero Quest for those not familiar? Not hearing you, Jim.
Oh, maybe push the earpiece in a little bit more. What about now?
Yep, gotcha. No, now we're not hearing you again.
I have an idea. I'm gonna just do this. Okay.
Hero Quest is.
Can you hear it now? Yeah.
Oh, good. Hero Quest is a story that Steve came up with as part of, like, in tandem with the game that he's creating, the card game, collectible card game that he's creating, and with all the music he's been creating for his last maybe 3 or 4 albums. It's a story of a kid who finds out that Earth is doomed, but if he allows himself to be mutated, genetically altered, given powers, and he will have to travel 400 years into the future to get these rings of power from 10 different worlds and 10 different people groups, so he'll be able to travel back and save Earth. And if that sounds like a lot to swallow, it is. That is not the whole story. It's only the tip of the story, and it really is, without making the pun, it's the hero's journey. But I could talk Star Wars all day long, and get angry and cheer and do all that sort of thing. But one of the great things we see from Luke is when you set out to be a hero, you find yourself on a path that can sometimes take you into villainy. And that's part of, without giving anything away, that's part of what he does. Like, it's like there's this desire that he has to be a hero, to save Earth, to save his family, to do everything he can. And it kind of sets him up. And it goes great. Like, I'm so excited. There's this group of publishers I work with in New Zealand, and I was able to bring in one of them to do kind of the edits on it. And they're like, Jim, this feels completely different. and yet it seems like every story I've ever loved and and cared for and reread. So it's really cool. And then in the midst of the book, also, I think is the phrase now light novels, where it's like a third graphic novel and two-thirds prose. There's also a graphic novel section to this book that tells hero's journey from a kid to getting this power before he goes on the journey, and it's got pinups and bios, and it's like this great introduction to not only the game but Steve Aoki's music. I made like every chapter part of the challenge, which each chapter was to take some of the lyrics of Steve's songs and work them in. So I don't know. We'll have to figure out if there's a prize for someone who can find all of Steve Aoki's lyrics in each of the chapters throughout.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention. What I love about Steve's work and his love of comics, how it always it feeds off his music. Like they really kind of tie into, and feed each other. It's like the symbiotic relationship. It's so great because I like having background music on when I read my books a lot of times. And obviously, Steve's inspired by music. He's inspired by the storytelling. So yeah, great project. Again, everybody, link in the show notes to go and check it out. We also have a couple other here that I want to mention. We have a second printing of the Stable graphic novel that you did with Morgan Rosenblum. Matt, what can you tell us about that? Because for me, that one, it speaks to what I love about sci-fi. Some of kind of the classic ideas, end of the world type stuff.
Have you read it yet?
I haven't, but I will. Yeah, I will.
That one I think has the best sort of at the end motif, oh shit moment of like what great sci-fi is trying to accomplish. And the tagline is 3 arcs, 2 worlds, 1 chance at survival. The quick pitch is Earth's sun is dying, and and humanity has basically lost hope. And then an alien civilization scanned our planet and knew we needed help. So they sent us the designs of space arcs. We built 3. Interstellar capable with pre-programmed coordinates to their homeworld, a place we were told could be our refugee. And then what happens when you can only fit 300,000 people in space arcs and Earth is doomed? How do you choose those people? How do the people who are chosen leave their families? And how do you reconcile how Earth is going to be left once those arcs leave? And we follow a group of people on the arcs, and we follow a group of people left behind on Earth, and those stories intertwine. And I think it's a hell of a ride. It's really, really fun. It was an idea that Morgan and I, had 5 years ago that we were just like brainstorming one day. We released the first printing with Heavy Metal, and then when I left Heavy Metal, I brought the book with me, and there's a handful of those in the first batch of books that are that we just have the rights to, and we wanted to put out as part of our catalog, and sort of call it a phase 1. And then the next books that are coming later, I think, are going to be even cooler to sort of tell books that I have not been with for so long. But one story that I'd love Steve to sort of comment on, since he's been there since the beginning with me, is Chupacabra. That story is really something that is near and dear to me. I'm of Latin American descent. I'm a Brazilian dual citizen, and Exile Studios was kind enough to give us this forum to create a story that we're hopefully going to develop into something more. And that was one of the first projects that Steve and I worked with outside, if not the first project outside of Heavy Metal. And I'll stop blabbering because I just get into tangents all the time.
Yeah, so Stable comes out July 16th, everybody, for another printing. So look for that. But the Chupacabra book that Matt's just talking about, Steve's going to tell us about right now, it's June 18th. So what can you tell us about Chupacabra, Steve?
For sure. June 18th, Blood and Ink, I think is our subtitle, if I remember correctly. I'm very, very excited for this book to come out. Gorgeous presentation, an exciting story. Like if folks like, Matt likes to say this, the tone of this book is kind of like Wednesday. I actually think it's kind of like, if folks remember the first Rian Johnson movie, Brick, that is
Oh
both
yeah.
simultaneously like a classic high school tale, but one with greater genre aspirations. Here we have something similar that is really deeply tied, well, both to like the sort of truth hunting of journalism, but also just some a wonderful extrapolation of like of Mayan mythology, of modern cryptids, of modern folklore and things like that. Set also in just like the classic relatively quiet town. It's set outside of in a San Diego suburb. And as someone whose ex-girlfriend is from Irvine, California, at that time the safest and arguably most boring city in the country. You know, I think there's a little bit of that teenage malaise. You're desperate for wonder. You're desperate for something different, something out of this world. Well, Alessandra Daisy Hernandez has that. You know, her father has passed away under mysterious circumstances in a bus accident many years ago. This is what drives her to pick up the school newspaper from the gutter basically and turn it into this vehicle for her to explore her own family history and how it connects to a rash of disappearances in her town, East Valley Ridge. And you know, as will happen with teenage capers, the rabbit hole goes very, very deep. In fact, it goes many hundred years into the past. And I think that it's just such a beautiful synthesis of that innocence you have when you're in mid adolescence where anything is possible. Here in comics, Alessandra gets to discover this intense sort of secret society, her own sort of mysterious past, her own connections to that society. And that's the magic of comics that we're doing right here because, you know, we think anything's possible when we're a teenager. In this story, stories like it, the stories that we love to bring us into this genre, anything really is possible. So in Al's world, there really is a secret history. There really is something to uncover. There really is a truth behind the madness, right? And she's there to explore it along with everyone who picks up the book.
Yeah, and one of the challenges, and it strikes me as you're talking about this and it having Latin themes and what have you, and I feel like that's a community that's kind of underserved when it comes to stories and representation. So a couple things here. We mentioned that it's kind of a crowded marketplace in the comic industry right now. So what's your distribution model? How are you getting the word out, other than talking to guys like me? And how important is it for you to have a breadth of representation in your stories? Because it's the one thing to reach people, but then you got to engage them, right? You got to make sure that they feel seen when they read the stories.
Yeah, I'll get a start, but I'd love to hear from both of you guys as well. We're going to have a Shopify online at Gungnir Books. Diamond Books is bringing us into all the stores, both comic shops and into Barnes and Nobles, Amazon, etc. We are exploring doing some Kickstarters, not as a source to fund the books, but as a way to get early fan support. Books will be already done and ready to ship, and I see the platform as a great place to sort of be a early source exploration platform rather than a crowdsource. Obviously, you'll make money from it, but we're not using it to fund the project. We're using it as a first out distribution model. In terms of diverse voices, it's really important to bring in voices of all walks of life. We have some amazing female artists that are drawing a lot of our books. We have a book called Aeon with Joe Harris of X-Files and Marvel, et cetera, et cetera. Lorenza Pomani, I'm definitely butchering her last name. I'm so sorry, Lorenza. She drew Aeon. Inks and colors, the whole thing, and it's just the most beautiful book I've ever seen. And she's incredible. But having those voices, having localized talent from around the world is super important. All of our books are going to be hardcover. We're not doing any single issues. We're doing all graphic novels, prose novels, or art books. We're going to be limiting print runs between 1,000 and 5,000 and then reprinting with new covers. We want to keep the collectability. We want to keep the art piece of these books high. We have a motto that if you're going to print a book and burn down a tree, you should make it beautiful. You should respect the tree. and all of the essence around it is to make beautiful books that can be displayed on your bookshelf that are not just for reading, but are also to create an emotional connection. And that the last bit I'll say before I'll hand it off is our marketing outside of talking to guys like you is really focused on the idea that I believe buying a book is no different than going to a music concert, like an Aoki concert. The emotional response that you'll get from going to the show and the memory of that show is the same emotional response you'll have from reading the book and the memory of the book and the and looking at the book as the art piece or the photo that you took when you were at the show. So we're marketing with an amazing marketing team led by my buddy Paul Reed from music marketing. We're bringing a bunch of guys that have never marketed in books before and that have marketed selling concert tickets and the emotional experiences. And I have this feeling and this hypothesis that let's try to do something that we've never thought of in books before. Let's try selling these books from the point of view of that they're emotional experiences that you can collect rather than books to read. And the books to read, obviously, we're selling books. You know you're going to read them, but let's sell the emotional connection first.
Yeah, very important. Jim, anything to add?
Only that when I first saw all the early imagery and all the early thoughts behind this as a publishing company, I started thinking about these reprints I read of the early Alan Moore work, Swamp Thing, where he talked about this is the swamp, things live here, things die here, and I feel like what makes this different is you're entering into not just one mythology, but lots of them, but they're all tied to this brand or this idea of saying no to the way things have been done before. And I really love that. I've always wanted to break every possible rule there is, and I've lived that way, which is why, I have the face I do. It's why I lack the hair I do compared to the other guys here. But it worked for Lex Luthor.
Well, I mean, and that's the other thing, because I think even when I went to the website for the first time to check it out when I first heard about it, there's this sense of building a community. So let me ask you, Steve, is that what you're trying to do here? It's not just about reaching, one reader one time. It's about building a community for people to come in and experience the books and experience the stories, but then come back for more, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the hope. You want the stories to stand on their own, but you also, down the road, hopefully a year from now, 2 years from now, people know when they see the Gungnir logo, it means a certain thing. It means a certain type of book. And, that's not in of itself unheard of, right? Like there are companies, for a long time, and in many cases still in the direct market, the Image Eye held that sort of prestige, right? So, and it still does. Like I'm not here to nag those guys. I love Image, but we're doing something different, So, and the thing is we have to reach new readers. We have to build these communities because it's not that the folks who are going in the Wednesday Warriors, as we used to, as they were there on the pie chart in the sales meetings, right? Like they're extremely valuable. It doesn't need to be an either or. Like reaching readers is a yes and I think a lot of companies don't necessarily look at it that way. I think we have to reach out. We have to put these books in the hands of people who maybe haven't even ever read a graphic novel before or a comic before, because the audience is out there, but a lot of folks who might be casual readers, I sound like much like the mythical casual wrestling fan, like, like they maybe don't even know how to access those things. I'm the only person in my field that has ever, for example, gone to my college. And when I just had my 15-year reunion, and folks, I mean, I went to a liberal arts school. They love reading. They love weird shit. Half of my professors think patchouli is soap, but at the same time, they don't necessarily know where to find these things. It's been 15 years since I graduated, and they're like, where do we find, other than, of course, putting your name on Amazon. So these are people that want to be served. They want to take in the genres that they might read for pleasure or view for pleasure. But, we haven't done the work as publishers of reaching out to them. You need only look at things. I 2 weeks ago, I was at one of my fiance's performances, and with a friend from college, and he was saying, oh, it feels like versus Japan, like American comics is kind of dying, right? Like not everybody, wants to read about superheroes. Maybe there's only 30 to 40,000 unique comic readers in the country, but they're really saying capes readers, right? If you look at things like Gozy's amazing series Check Please, which can just pull like crowdfunder after crowdfunder of to like a sports romance. It's a queer hockey romance. I listen, Jim, you can probably confirm if you and I went and pitched publishers on a sports romance right now, 99% of them would say that both of those genres are dead in American comics, but they're not. The audiences are there. So the work we have to do is to make ourselves known, and show them that there is a community for people who want these types of stories. And the last thing I'll say is that, again, what have I seen in the past 10 years? Make ourselves known is very important. I've been part of, perhaps surprising no one, I've been part of a fair amount of like quote unquote diverse product launches. And many places, I mean, the books are great, I'm not even talking about my own. Other people can say that or not, but the books are often great. However, the folks putting them out seem to think that it's Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. But it's not Field of Dreams. Those people don't even know where the fucking baseball, where it's played.
Yeah.
Right. So we have to, that's what I mean about making ourselves known. You got an audience that's huge over here that wants these things. You have a publisher over here that is making these things, but they don't know how to talk to each other. Because for the past, at least since 1992, they've only been talking to this very small group, which is a vital group, by the way, but many languages are spoken when it comes to readership. So that's what's really exciting to me. When Matt talks about hiring people from outside of comics that think differently about marketing, that think differently about sales, when I hear about different sales mediums and venues, to me, those are all just new ways to reach an audience that we all know is out there. But it's, we have yet to find the Rosetta Stone. So, have we found it? We're searching for it. That's all we can do. But that's always exciting to me as a creator. And now it's exciting to me as an editor.
Yeah, I mean, you're speaking, you're preaching to the choir here. I mean, my motto, as you guys know, Steve for sure knows, is, there's a comic out there for everybody. I take it as a personal challenge. People tell me, I don't like comics. Well, you don't like stories? You don't go to the movies and watch TV? All you need to make a comic reader is to find the right story, match it up with the right person, and then it's like a gateway drug, right? Like it opens up the doors for them. So that's the other part of this, meeting them where they're at, whether that be video games or music or, TV, film, that sort of thing. So I know you guys, like any new publisher, you want those revenue streams and you want those audiences, you want to be able to connect with those readers, but the focus is on story. So, are those avenues open for you? And can you reassure our listeners that that doesn't mean you're going to go Hollywood, so to speak, and you're going to stop putting out great stories, right?
From my point of view, Hollywood is lacking great stories right now. The number one movie of the year, Dune, comes from a great story. I just read a report yesterday that says that it's going to shatter the last 2 years of box office opening, somewhere upwards of 170 million, and that just proves the point that it's about great stories. When we look at pitches and edit stories, we're thinking about them as franchises. And I'm a big believer that all great stories should start off as books. Whether it's a graphic novel or a prose novel, there's something magic about reading something and using your imagination to fill in the holes, and then seeing other artists' interpretation of that on the screen. So from our point of view, I don't think we would ever tell anything but great stories, and we hope that people meet us at great stories and then take those great stories and iterate them into games, into tabletops, into films and TV shows and toys and everything in between.
And I feel like Gungnir, as an idea, is already a story that's inviting people in. There's this built-in mythology to this that doesn't exist with any other publisher.
The Bifrost must be fed.
Yeah, well, it's like I said, we'll go to the website for the first time. It already feels like you're exploring a community. Hey, do I want to be a part of this? So best of luck, gentlemen. I'm sure we'll be reviewing the books as they come out. Listeners will let you know when they're coming out. And hopefully we'll get some of the creators on to talk specifics when some of the books do come out. So as we're winding down here, again, I want to thank you for your time. We'll go around the horn one last time. Anything else that you want a chance to mention? We'll start with you, Jim. Anything to let our listeners know?
Do it.
So I'm editing one of Matthew's books right now,
A prose novel.
a prose novel. You want to give the title?
It's called Existence Equation, The Price of the Stars. And when I pitched it to Jim, I was unbelievably honored that he would edit it, to be quite
Oh,
frank.
and it's so exciting. It's about the choices that a 17-year-old has to make for the rest of his life, including will he live a normal human life or will he choose a form of immortality, but an android form? And it's all about the choices going into it. One of the things I love about the existence equation and the Steve Aoki Hero Quest, the Chupacabra project is like all these stories have this sense of imaginative speculation to them, where you're not just entering a world that a creator created, you're entering the question, and
Exactly.
those questions then relate back to not only the reader but the creator in the first place, and it's within that I think these worlds can really be investigated. So I'm so excited to be editing
Yeah, I mean, you
Matthew's
read
new
those type
book.
of stories and you're like, can't help it. What would I do, right? And then, like you were saying earlier, Matt, then you're at the bar on Friday night going, okay, listen to this, guys. What would you do if, right? I mean, that's just so
Yeah,
fantastic.
and this is like I feel like these stories are an invitation into that. It's even an invitation. They're even an invitation into the dialogue, and you know, I miss going into a comic shop and seeing a cover that I've never seen before. I miss that kind of experience, and it feels like there's something to discover with what we're trying to put out that is really exciting.
What about you, Steve? Any last thoughts for our listeners?
I think, well, yeah, I think that it's exciting. It just for me as an editor and for readers to know that these books are coming from a place that truly is trying to be a yes company, right? Like this is a place that really wants to. We are trying to listen. We are putting more power in the hands of folks that rarely have it. Why do readers care about that? Because the books are truly singular. And that's what happens, when you create an ecosystem for people instead of a factory production line. So I think that every Gungnir book is different. Every Gungnir book still feels like Gungnir, but each one is truly unique. And we are coming out of the gate, as Matt has hinted at. I think with some of the best and most dynamic and exciting art on the market. We've talked about Blood and Ink. We've talked about Aeon. I'm going to go ahead and talk about another one, Black Lullaby, which I will only tease like is truly like for folks that are reading like Fabulous Killjoys that Gerard Way's been working on. Like this is if you meshed up that sort of like super heroic pop art style that we see in things like that in Umbrella Academy, but if you took that and added sort of almost like a graffiti style, almost like a classic vinyl record cover style. Every panel, every page of this book looks like the coolest like hidden gem in a record shop you've ever found. And it's just one of many. So we're not just coming out of the gate with great stories. We're coming out of the gate with great art. And I would bring it around to say, yeah, Jim said a word that I love. He said speculation, speculate. I'm a pretentious asshole. But and one of the ways that I am is that I like to say that what I really enjoy is speculative fiction. And it's not a thing that we say that much anymore. It's soft sci-fi, it's hard sci-fi, it's science fantasy. But I really think that the market is there and the hunger is there for what I would call speculative fiction, things that play off very real anxieties and stresses and passions of the day. So that's what I would say we're doing. And I think that's exciting because I would argue we're doing it better than anyone else in the market. And it's also exactly what we need right now in the hearts of our readership.
100%. And I think, especially over the last, I'd say 15 to 20 years, the future has become less certain, right? Doesn't it, things feel less certain, more up in the air than they ever had maybe since the days of the Cold War? Are things going to end in a nuclear holocaust? We're not.
Well, Jace, as someone who grew up watching Thundar the Barbarian, I'm just really happy the fucking moon didn't split in half in
Yeah,
1994.
exactly. 100%. But that's what I mean. It's this idea that God, the future's never been less certain. So you're right. Having speculative fiction, I think, speaks to kind of the angst of society right now. But we could go on about that for hours, but I'll throw it over to Matt to bring us home. Any last thoughts for the readers, Matt?
I'm just thankful that these two are coming along for the ride. Some of the best, brightest, most incredibly beautiful minds in comics and just writing in general, and helping to create this guiding light for what we're trying to create as a community. As Steve and Jim said, we're trying to tell stories that haven't been told before, and trying to share art that hasn't been seen before, and trying to create a community where people are helping each other as creators, helping each other as community members, and somewhere that people are excited for other people's success more than they are jealous. And I think that's something that is missing in a lot of what's happening in the world today. And if we can do our small little part to create a community filled with wonder and joy, then we're having a good time.
Yeah, great way to have a good time. So again, gentlemen, best of luck with the project. I'm sure we'll be talking again, and I will be giving it plenty of coverage here on the Comic Source. To you listeners, again, link in the show notes. Go check it out. Just, spend a minute. Go to the website, check it out. I'm sure you're going to find a story that gets you excited. You can pre-order. Check the date when it's coming out. Talk to your comic book shop about it so you can get your hands on it when it's released. So we want to thank you, listeners, as always, for supporting us and for listening, and we will talk to you next time.